The United States and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire in a deal that includes the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz.
Cécile Colère and Jacques Paris, a French couple detained in Iran since May 2022, are finally free. US Vice President J.D. Vance arrived in Hungary in a show of support towards Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán ahead of this weekend's elections.
FIFA has opened disciplinary proceedings against Spain's Football Federation after Islamophobic chants were made during a friendly game against Egypt last month.
The United States and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire late on Tuesday, as U.S. President Donald Trump held off on his threatened attacks on Iranian bridges and power plants, in a deal that includes the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's Supreme National Security Council said it has accepted the ceasefire and that it would negotiate with the United States in Islamabad beginning Friday. Neither Iran nor the United States said when the ceasefire would begin, and even as it was announced, missile alerts continued across the Gulf and Israel kept up its strikes on Iran. Israel said it also agreed to the ceasefire but added that it does not include Lebanon, contradicting statements from Pakistan's Prime Minister, a key mediator, that Israel and Hezbollah would also cease their fighting. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said passage through the Strait of Hormuz would be allowed under Iranian military management. It wasn't immediately clear whether that meant Iran would completely loosen its chokehold on the waterway. In addition to control of the strait, Iran's demands for ending the war include withdrawal of U.S. combat forces from the region, the lifting of sanctions, and the release of its frozen assets. Oil prices fell sharply on Wednesday morning as European and Asian markets surged after the U.S. and Iran agreed to a 2-week ceasefire that includes reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Although traders remain cautious until the truth proves durable, markets reflected the newfound optimism that the conflict may cease. Brent crude stood at around $95 per barrel on Wednesday morning, up almost 30% since the war began in late February, but well below the peaks of recent weeks of $110 per barrel. The Euro Stoxx 50 was up more than 3% in early trading, while the broader pan-European Stoxx 600 was over 4% higher and eyeing the largest daily increase since April 2025. The worry that has stalked markets since late February still remains, namely that a prolonged disruption to Gulf oil flows will keep energy prices elevated long enough to push a fresh wave of inflation through the global economy, with or without a ceasefire.
Cécile Colère and Jacques Paris, the French teaching couple detained in Iran since May 2022, are finally free after 3.5 years of captivity following espionage charges that they have always denied. In a message on X, French President Emmanuel Macron announced their release and added that they were already on their way to France. He praised the assistance of Omani authorities, which he said had worked to secure their release. The 41-year-old literature professor and her 72-year-old retired teacher partner were sentenced last October to 20 and 17 years in prison, respectively, for espionage, including for Israel. They were released in early November but were forbidden from leaving Iranian territory. US Vice President J.D. Vance urged Hungarians to back Prime Minister Viktor Orbán in upcoming elections. Dubbing the populist leader a defender of Western civilization during a joint press conference with the Hungarian Prime Minister, J.D. Vance accused the European Union of interfering in Hungary's election campaign and imposing censorship, while opposition leader Peter Magyar warned against foreign involvement in the vote, urging all countries to respect Hungary's sovereignty.
What has happened in this country, what has happened in the midst of this election campaign is one of the worst examples of foreign election interference that I've ever seen or ever even read about. The bureaucrats in Brussels have tried to destroy the economy of Hungary. They have tried to make Hungary less energy independent. They have tried to drive up costs for Hungarian consumers, and they've done it all because they hate this guy.
Vance did not address the numerous recent reports that Russian secret services are meddling in Hungary's election to tip it in Orban's favour. The Hungarian government has repeatedly claimed that Kyiv and Brussels are trying to oust Orban.
Mi 4 éve élünk egy háború árnyékában, és meg vagyunk győződve arról, hogy ha 22-ben Donald Trump lett volna az Egyesült Államok elnöke, ez a háború ki sem tört volna. És hogyha az európaiak, még pontosabban Brüsszel nem akadályozná az elnök béketörekvéseit, már régen béke lehetne Ukrajnában.
Vance will remain in Budapest until Wednesday, according to a poll published last week by the 21 Research Institute. The opposition Caesar Party leads among decided voters with 56%.
20 éve nem járt ilyen magasrangú amerikai vezető Magyarországon. J.D. Vance a sajtótájékoztatón többször elismételte, hogy nem azért jött, hogy Orbán Viktor mellett kampányoljon, majd utána többször hozzátette, hogy ettől függetlenül a magyar miniszterelnök az egyetlen Európában, amely megőrizheti a kontinens lelkiismeretét és megóvhatja a magyarokat az energiaválságtól. Siposhegyi Zoltán, Euronews, Budapest.
A gunman was killed and 2 others were wounded in a shootout Tuesday with police outside the Israeli consulate in Istanbul. 2 officers were lightly injured, the Istanbul governor said. Authorities have identified the assailants. It remains unclear whether the incident was a planned attack on the consulate. The Israeli consulate was not operational, according to authorities.
Hello from Istanbul. Today, the Israeli Consulate General in the megacity of 20 million people has been targeted in an attack by suspected ISIS militants. Turkish authorities have said that one of the 3 suspects had certain ties to the extremist organization, and one had a drug record in his background, drug use background. Other than that, Turkish police have already, and Turkish Ministry of Interior has already started an investigation, and they say that the efforts to conclude it are still ongoing. Meanwhile, 2 of the suspects have been killed in their standoff with the Turkish police. That's Emre Basharan for Euronews in Istanbul.
The former French President Nicolas Sarcoi took the stand on Tuesday at the Paris court regarding the allegations of Libyan funding of his 2007 presidential campaign. Sarkozy is being prosecuted in this political and financial case, which began in 2011, in which the court suspects a corruption pact with Muammar Gaddafi's regime to support his successful campaign. He has contested these allegations from the outset, telling that not a single cent of Libyan money was involved in his campaign. Having been sentenced in September 2025 at first instance to 5 years in prison, and having spent 3 weeks in prison in late October and early in November, Nicolas Sarkozy is now fighting for his rehabilitation. As in the first trial, Sarkozy is appearing alongside around 10 co-defendants whom the court suspects of having set up secret financial channels using international intermediaries and diplomatic connections. Nicolas Sarkozy will be heard again on Wednesday and on Monday. This appeal trial is expected to last until June the 3rd.
FIFA says it has opened disciplinary proceedings against the Spanish Football Federation after Islamophobic chants were made by Spanish fans during a game against Egypt last month. Spanish fans were heard chanting, quote, "Who doesn't jump is a Muslim," during the pre-World Cup friendly game, which ended in a 0-0 draw. Announcements over the stadium's PA system and screens displayed anti-racism slogans and called for respect during the match, but the chanting continued. The chants drew condemnation from Spain and Barcelona superstar Lamine Yamal, who's a practicing Muslim himself. Yamal acknowledged that the chants hurt him, even though they weren't directed at him. In a post on Instagram after the match, the 18-year-old winger labeled those who use religion as a mockery as, quote, "ignorant and racist." Spain manager Luis de la Fuente also condemned what he called intolerable behavior in the post-match press conference, adding that it doesn't represent the country or national team. Separate from the FIFA proceedings, Spanish police announced that it has launched its own probe into the incident, which is being handled by the Hate Crime and Discrimination Unit. Spain's Foreign Minister José Alvarez conveyed his apologies and condemnation of the fans' behavior to his Egyptian counterpart Badr Abdelati. The top Egyptian diplomat denounced the xenophobic remarks, but emphasized that they view Spain as a tolerant and pluralistic country.
American rapper Kanye West has been blocked by the UK government from entering the country to perform at the Wireless Music Festival. For the last several years, West has caused outrage for anti-Semitic, racist and pro-Nazi comments. The UK government has discretion to ban foreign nationals from entering the UK if their presence is not considered conducive to the public good. Wireless Festival responded to the news, saying that they had consulted multiple stakeholders in advance of booking Yi and no concerns were highlighted at the time. But the festival has now been cancelled and organisers said that all ticket holders will receive a refund. Charity Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, who had been urging sponsors to boycott the event, welcomed the decision. A few days earlier, Pepsi and PayPal were among the brands who withdrew their sponsorships from the festival.